when you got God in your plans, you can make your plans bigger. Oh, bigger. So if they ask about me, just tell them I be bigger. Oh, me, I be bigger. Oh, I be bigger. Oh, when problems come my way, I hit chop on like dinner. Oh, they say when you got God in your plans, you can make your plans bigger. Oh, so ask about me, just tell them I be green. Oh, me, I be green. Original gun dollar from the Oga shot. Ask them who's gonna lead the way, they say Oga now. Presidential, like Rabbi Yochanan. Springing Torah in the land of Canaan. What say ye, sons of Ham? Without a borders over down, find God shot. Babylon done finished, plus it's time's up. Rabbi Pinchas, I feel this leader on the quest to distinguish the bitter from the best. My shot level's good for the starter, but you gotta have depth to understand the matter. If you follow me, I'll go on like water. Gotta draw like water. Oh my God, they swim, oh. But it gets the Sahara. Oh my God, just that window. No surrender, no retreat. Fire shot doing spin, oh. You can never sin for.
Television presents Rabbi Mordechai. It starts like this.
With intentional intent. Tikkun Olam we present. With intentional intent. Tikkun Olam we present. I be when obstacles in my way, I they chop up like Dino. They say when you got God in your plans, you can make your plans bigger. Bigger. So if they ask about me, just tell them I be winner. Me, I be winner. When problems come my way, I they chop up like Dino. They say when you got God in your plans, you can make your plans bigger. Bigger. So if they ask about me, just tell them I be original gun dollar from the Oga shop. Ask them who's gonna lead the way, they say Oga now. Presidential, like Rabbi Yochanan. In the land of Canaan. What say ye, sons of Ham? Put that the borders over down, find God shop. Babylon done finished, plus it's time now. Rabbi Pinchas, I finished here on the quest to distinguish the future from the best. The shot level's good for the starter, but you gotta have depth to understand the matter. If you follow me, I'll go like water. Now the doors like water. Oh my God, they swim up. When it gets to your Sahara. Oh my God, just that window. Fire shots, then we spin up. I resent though. You can take a step for righteousness as a sin though. That's why you always trust your nose. Only 60 didn't sin. With intentional intent. Tikkun Olam we present. With intentional intent. Tikkun Olam we present. Tikkun Olam we know. You see the difference between a winner and a loser? A loser, a loser plays not to lose. And a winner, it takes to win. We be winners. When you're super, every year they have a number one pick. You have to say. Number one pick. They have an all-rookie pick. Every year they have all-stars. Every year they have all-pro. Yes, sir. But what does this have to do with the Hall of Fame? What does it have to do with the Hall of Famers? Hey! Now, they just show up to the job with the jersey on now and run up the numbers. Now, if you have all that, what do we need to finish? This one. ginger. Oh my God, go enter. We go enter. We go enter. We go enter. Hey, my center. Blessings make me ginger. Oh my God, go enter. We go enter. We go enter. Hey, like those sweet like splendor. Blessings make me ginger. Oh my God, they're winners. Enjoyment, go ahead. Praise the team now. I see the condition of team now. We just stay so like how. We just stay so like how. The haters don't look like how. We just stay. So the thing don't low. When the bitch can't guard them. See blessings, they form them. Make blessings form them. Place everything they form them. Hey, we gon' feast. The team like yeast. Step inside, we know eat. Yes, sir. So I got that popular. Gorgeous day. Gorgeous day. Gorgeous day. Gorgeous day, my sister. Go enter. Yes, you make me ginger. Oh my God, go enter. We go enter. We go enter. We go enter. We go enter. Gorgeous day, my sister. Hey. 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 We go enter. We go enter. Blessings make me ginger. Oh my God, go enter. We go enter. We go enter. We go. Hey, enjoyment. We go enter. We go enter. Yahoo passes the ball to Rabbi Akiva up the pitch. Passes to Rabbi Yochanan. He passes it to Yishai. Yishai passes it back to him. He passes it back to Yishai. So what is this? Oh, Rosh Hashiva Pinchas is coming up. Passes back to Rabbi Pinchas Shaddai. Oh, he passes to Zohar. He shoots. And he's like, see my guy now. Yes, sir. Oh, you killing. You don't inspire me. You don't inspire me, no. That's it. Whoa, that was it.
I told you, if you didn't have a family back home, you would never leave. You would never leave. You would never leave. We have Torah, we have energy, we have life. It's not boring. It's life. The energy behind that? You will never leave this place.
Listen, that's World Cup, FIFA, blah, blah, blah. This is the part, you know. When you finish the song, you dance. What is that? You see, boom, bam! Make it possible. We'll do the first part of the
This is going to be live.
And then we'll break into music, and then we'll finish off and finish that.
Yeah. Especially you have a very good camera too.
I know you didn't say that.
But your phone has a very good camera. Oh, it's good enough to like face a lot of things.
Yeah, you can use this and use the clip for
that song. The last one. This is the son of the summer.
Oh, for sure.
You know, you're right. That's what we get into the soccer guys, get the little dance after on the pitch, and it just World Cup.
We've all got.
Come on now, that was the first pass now. That's the goes from Yesiahu to him. He passes to Akiva. Akiva passes to him. He passes to you. You're doing dribbling. Then all of a sudden, Rachel are coming down the field. Passing the ball. He passes to me. Back to him. And then out of nowhere, you don't see the flight. Becky shot come on. Bring your leg now.
You're leading too soon, my brother. You're leading too soon.
I gotta go too. No, he's back in like 2 weeks. Akiva.
But we know.
We know.
We send the link to the people.
Okay, so yeah, he's about to start. Yeah.
No.
We're gonna go good.
I believe on you.
The guy at the store was like, I said, no. Nothing. You just looked at me. You're like, woman.
No, my wife should be coming. Woman power.
She's afraid to come, you know why? Because there's some terrorist attack. They only kill cops.
But that's all he demands is gay.
I'm actually like, how can you explain this?
Retaliation is a must.
C'est plus intéressant pour le marché maintenant.
J'ai dit à ma femme, j'ai vu que Hachem veut que je ne pas dans la street et tout ça, tu vois. Mais retaliation is a must.
You're still 11, what do you want?
Non, je vais comme ça, je vais voir la famille un peu, you know. Puis je vais au supermarché parce que je vais acheter ça comme ça, tu vois. Acheter ça pour boire comme ça, pour pas de gueule, tu vois. How much do you get this for?
40 check. 40 check for the speaker?
No, the juice.
The juice. Oh, I was like, 40 check. That's a great deal.
Yeah.
I didn't even need one I was still buying.
Oh, on prendra plus tard, cousin. À propos, j'ai trouvé le site où ils pourraient faire les NFT. Mais il y a ceux qui font ça pour $100 par heure, comme ça. Bon, je sais pas comment combien ils peuvent faire pour par heure. Donc, peut-être un jour, il faut qu'on les appelle comme ça pour
Let's throw me Mordechai first. I'll just
Give me a
What say ye, sons of Ham?
The only password that I have for you, the password for your device, this is the password for your Apple email.
T'es bloqué maintenant. Il n'a plus de valeur. Il est trop lourd.
Oh my God, they swim, oh. We know. Oh, is this your phone?
Yeah.
We know. Kashmir. You know the main words in Kashmir? Yeah. Everything else is just here. Yeah. Hey, this thing landed me a wife. I got your Kashmir coming for me for sure. For sure. Why not? Rabbi Jesus, I feel the leader on the quest to distinguish the bishop from the best. But shot level's good for the slaughter. But you gotta have that to understand the matter. If you follow me, run like water. Gotta toss like water. All my guys, they swim, oh. Battle against the Sahara. All my guys just didn't win, oh. No retreat, fire shots, then we spin, oh. I resent, oh. Righteousness has a sin, oh. Touch your nose. That didn't sin. With intentional intent. Tikino line we present. With intentional intent. Tikino line we present. We not so.
You said the difference between a winner and a loser? And a loser plays not to lose. And the winner only plays to win.
For sure.
Hey, so how you gonna beat that guy now?
Yeah, for sure.
When we be winners, oh. Winners, oh. When we be winners, oh. After closing the way, we chop them like dinner, oh. They say you got God, big, oh. So when they ask about me, tell them I be winner, oh. Every year they have a number one pick. Every year they have an all-star team. Every year they have an all-star
For sure.
game.
Every time.
Every year they have all those now. What is that to do with Hall of Famers?
Leaders. Revolutionary movements. He's the one who came. Martin Luther King Jr. He did not come.
Even I'm going to join myself.
Southern Africa when
Look, I'm doing something. It's gonna work. It's gonna work.
according to the information that I still have.
Duties.
His assassination.
Oh, for sure.
So we knew.
See you soon. I'll see you tomorrow.
Oh man.
Where do you think you are going?
He has duty.
I,
The future wife.
I know it.
She come back from France. You have to show off.
Now I
And
know
these
it.
girls are serious, man.
Yeah,
I just realized,
she's
like, it does have a very like first they sweet and this thing, then the demands, then the attitude, then react to the attitude. I'm not attituding. I'm just saying.
Call of Duty. That's a great one.
That's the game.
Today I call myself the conqueror of American Empire.
Hey! Hey! You joined the army.
What else?
Take him down.
No, what?
Take him down.
No.
You know, Ukrainian calling me, I make him cry. But if I have a phone call from American brother, there's a fight here. Hey, guy, we're here. We're taking over. Hey. Hold on. Take him down. Make them cry.
I'm gonna bring back that invoice. According to my calculations, you owed 300 million 100 years ago. So if you calculate the interest, all these things don't finish. And you're all this year.
Rabbi, it's not recording, it's just on Facebook.
It's recording.
Oh, it's recording right now?
It's recording in my computer.
Yeah, it's recording your computer.
Yeah.
So I have to pause for 1 second. So we're here again, Bashina Kadisha. Wanted to thank Rabbi Pinchas for creating a yeshiva where we can learn and we teach and we share what we learn, which we learn here, which is and dance, yeah. And everybody probably saw before the year started. You saw Zachariah Levine, Zachariah ben Avraham, L'chaim OG, and he blessed us with some of his new music. I think one song was actually with Young, who's a producer originally from Florida, but he's living in Los Angeles, but he's here visiting as well. And it's a big point because every culture, if you learn with people from Iraq, if you learn from people from Syria, you learn from people from Persia, you learn with people from Iran, you learn with people from Eastern Europe, everyone. Music is a big part of how the Siddiqim throughout the generations have expressed happiness. And that music has always been connected to the cultures of that time and what's going on. And so, L'chaim OG is making music specifically for the space. I'm not limiting it, but just making music specifically for the space of yeshiva and learning and giving chizuk to people who learn. So Hashem should strengthen his efforts and bring him lyrics and words and ideas that touch the masses. Amen. And most of us coming from Black culture, whether it's in Africa or America, hip hop and these types of things. This is our culture. This is how we communicate. This is how we express ourselves. So, we got to make it holy. Okay, so tonight we're going to tackle a big issue. And the big issue that we're going to tackle tonight, and this is kind of a precursor to kind of, in a way, how we're going to deliver Torah ideas in North America. But we're going to explain tonight how Hashem has created a world and gave us a world in this generation that the free market system of capitalism and globalization, with the right wisdom behind it, will be a mechanism to lead us to world peace and into a new era of human thought. And so we're going to get there. But before we get there, we're going to create a few rules to understand this year. So the first idea, so the Torah begins with this concept or this idea, or God explaining to us, this Bereshis bara Elohim et Hashmayim ve'et haaretz. He says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? So the Arizal says that the reason why that we use the word Bereshis starts with a bet and not, other words, is that the bet represents the idea of Bria. And so the Bria is this idea that we live within four worlds. Like sometimes you go to IHOP and you order pancakes and they have these pancakes stacked on top of each other, right? Right. So you get 4 pancakes. So the Torah, the sages tell us that we live, the reality that we live in is basically 4 levels, 4 pancakes, whatever, 4 levels. The highest level is Absolute. And that's just pure light from Hashem. That light from Hashem starts to become somewhat physical, or not physical, but it starts to express itself differently than just pure light. And this is the idea of Bria. And then the word from Bria goes into the world of Asiya, Yisira. And yes, right, Yisira. In the world of Yisira is like, considered the world of formation, where that light kind of becomes, it develops somewhat of a personality, for lack of a better idea.
And then it goes into the world of Asya, which is the world of the physical world that we're in, and that's where it manifests itself. So the light comes down from this upper world, like pure light, like if you could imagine, like pouring. You have some water, and you pour it into something that filters it, and as it filters, you're able to distinguish. So that the light itself, the pouring would be the world of absolute. The filtering process of taking this water would be the world of Bria. And then the world of Asya would be this world of kind of differentiating the different aspects of the water. And then the manifestation of that water for you to drink would be the world of Asya, right? So we live in 4 worlds. That's real. We live in 4 worlds, and we only recognize the world that we're in right now. So how do I make this idea even more clear? So science says like this, science being quantum physics. Quantum physics says the human eye only sees less than 1% of reality. Not just the human eye, all the 5 senses, right? So the human eye only sees less than 1% of reality. And not only that this 1% reality that we're experiencing is connected to this 99% reality, right? Go ahead, please.
That's a fact.
It's a fact. Some people say 5%, some people say 1%, but that's either the human eye sees less than 1 to maybe some people argue say 5% of reality. And you can look that up, that's quantum physics.
It's infrared and ultraviolet, right? Everything in between that you see and everything else you know.
Exactly. And so the idea is to say that the human eye only sees less than 1%. Even say if you say 10%, right? But we're going to go 1% because it sounds good. Less than 1% of reality, and there's a whole 99% of reality happening around us all the time. And you could say cells, molecules, all these different things are moving around us all the time, and we can't see it. And so the sages take it even further and says, not only can you not see the cells and the molecules around you, you can't see the energy that infuses the cell and the molecules, right? Because there's an energy that everything that exists exists in a frame of energy. And so that energy that's behind, that infuses it, you can't even connect to that on the 5 senses. And to even go further, we're saying that there are literally worlds. There's worlds that are happening around us that we have no physical recognition to. Right? So this is the idea. So the idea is to say that the human being is limited. And you guys know that this is open discussion, this is Habura. So jump in, the rabbi's here with us, to give makos if I say anything wrong. Sometimes you need. Some guys pay for it. But the thing is, the point is saying that the human, our rational perception, even if you don't want to deal with the spiritual worlds, right? Say that's too heavy for a person. But just on a physical level, we know we have cell and molecules around us, floating atoms, floating around us all the time, and we can't see any of it. And so the scientists call this idea that of what we can't see, string theory. You can look that up too. String theory are these energy vibrations that are going on around us all the time that influence the reality that we live in, right? Well, I've joined in. So how do I make the screen big again when it goes small?
Maybe click on your picture.
Yeah, I click on it, but it doesn't make it big. Yeah. Akiva. Oh, so you do it twice?
Double click.
Okay, double click. Okay, fine. So the scientists tell us that there's cells, molecules, this whole thing. But you understand, in the Torah, we don't just focus on what it is, we focus on what is the source of it, right? So what we understand when we ask a Jewish person or someone who's in Torah, we say, hey, you know what? This physical reality is fueled by a spiritual reality. So that 1% reality that our mind is able to comprehend is fueled by a 99% reality. In the same way that I have a body, which is, I could only see, like, according to science, only 1% of that reality I could see, which is the human body, but that human body is fueled by a soul. right? That is a soul. Everyone has a soul and body. When someone passes away, the body's still there. So what's gone? The soul's gone, or an aspect of the soul is gone, right? So we want to know what fuels that soul in order to give it life. So that's Hashem. So the point or the idea is to say that there's a physical reality, there's a non-physical reality, there's a body, and there's a soul. And so the magical question is, what fuels the soul? I know how to feel the body, right? Akiva's having an amazing cheese sandwich. You know, people are having l'chaims, you know, all these, but these things all fill the body, right? Going to sleep at night, you know, relations with our wives, all these different things are fueling the physical reality. But what fills the soul? Oh, he's back. Oh, they probably blocked the.
Oh, yeah, it's locked, right? Yasso said he can't even get it.
He can't get in, so the whole thing's locked down. Yeah, Reflush Lima to the police officers that were involved in the stabbing, and the old city's locked down. We can't leave. Pretty sure it's the reason why my wife can't get in either. Okay. Maybe we no more violence, and sadness leaves this world. So okay. So thank you, Rob Benjamin, for blessing us with your presence. Have some tea. Have some tea.
The grandpa, only he doesn't grandpa.
Undercover. He got loaded up. Okay, so this is the question. What fills the soul? I know what fills the body. I could go to any university in the world, they'll tell me exactly what nutrition is, what I need to do, but what fills the soul? And so the Torah says that the only thing that could fill the soul is the light force of Hashem. The light force of Hashem. So Hashem gives us this spiritual technology that we call the 613 mitzvot and all these things within that. And all these things are here to fill the soul. But the world that we live in today tells us, no, don't worry about the soul, just fill the body. You know, buy this, buy that, work this, build this, conquer this, acquire that, all these different things, and you're gonna be happy, right? You see a commercial for a sports car, the guy's driving, he has this girl that they told us was beautiful and all these other forms of advertisement. They said, this girl's beautiful, and if you're successful with this girl, this guy has these types of clothes on. All these different things are going on, and that we're told is supposed to make us happy, right? That's what we're told. So where does this desire to be happy comes from? This desire for happiness comes from the idea of the soul being filled. And this is the issue in North America, is that we have a whole community of people, hundreds of millions of people that believe that if I'm successful, if I'm wealthy, if I have this amount of diamonds, if I have this house that's this big, if I have this car, if I have this many women, if I have whatever I want, these different things, I'm going to be happy. And the Torah says the opposite. He says, no, you're only going to be happy when the soul is filled, because the soul is what fuels the body. And if the soul leaves the body, you're dead. Okay, so that's that idea. So let's talk about the two. Go ahead, please.
But you see that maybe the problem is that, like Rabbi Zachariah likes to say, happiness is transactional and joy is a state of consciousness. So maybe the problem, maybe yes, having that girl or those girls and having that car, those clothes, and job is gonna make you happy. But maybe that's the problem. We're running after happiness instead of running after or seeking joy, which is a state of consciousness. So maybe that's the problem. Happiness is only, it comes and goes, and really we should be looking for joy, which transcends a person's surroundings and circumstances. That's why a person can be rich, can be happy, but he still feels like there's something that he or she doesn't have because they don't enjoy.
100%, and I think you're making a very important point, is this idea of being able to separate pleasure from fulfillment. Because a person could achieve a lot of pleasure. Like a person could go out to a club and bring 7 girls home with him, right? And all these girls are 10s. And he could do whatever he wants with these particular girls and experience a lot of pleasure. But he's only gonna have true fulfillment when he's married and he has a dedication to a particular woman and he has children and he has a family. That's gonna bring him fulfillment. But that's not what we're focused on. In the West, in America, we're focused on pleasure, right? And that's exactly what you're saying. Is this idea of pleasure blinds us to this concept of fulfillment, and we're not able to differentiate.
Just a funny idea, but they say, you saying pleasure, I think it's also sort of like wants versus needs, right? What you want versus what you need. Pleasure is like, I want to feel this, I want to feel that, I want to have 7 girls. I need one woman and to blah, 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 blah. And I think for people that go through the 3-day shell egg, it crystallizes in your brain the difference between wants and needs. Because the natural thought is, hey, I need water every day. I need food. I need whatever. And you realize, like,
not really.
Is it possible that I just wanted that? Okay, maybe one day, but not 2 days. Like, I for sure need water after 2 days. You know what I mean? Made it in. So
I know. And then I have pizza for you too. Yeah, exactly. You can take the ball.
So wants versus needs. Not wants versus needs, but there's also an idea. It's funny. I remember in junior high school, a friend of mine had this definition, and she was like, "What you're doing is masturbation. Like something that feels good, but it doesn't produce life." And I'm like, and if you think about it, the culture, and now the industry of, which is like the biggest industry in the world, is like, that's the thing. Like, hey, don't worry about like actually creating something or making something. Just feel good. Close your eyes. Imagine you're anywhere, and just do that all the time.
That's why they call themselves a consumer society.
Yeah. Consumption. And so this idea of consumption has created a society that's not able to empathize with other people that are different than them, whether they're people domestically or even people abroad. Because if you're only focused on consuming yourself and consuming what you want, then from that place, you're self-absorbed. Like America is all about my rights, what my rights are. As we're in the Torah, we have obligations towards others. And we're gonna get into that, but we're just building a koach and understanding, but the Torah itself has obligations towards others. We have obligations towards God. We have even obligations to our own body. But these are things that God commanded us to do that makes us go outside of ourselves. In America, we just have rights. So if we limit our intellect and we limit ourselves to that frame of reference, we're not going to be able to achieve these states of consciousness that Akiva was saying that are going to allow us to be fulfilled. So let's talk about these tools, and then we're going to build into the economy. And I'm telling you, you're going to be really surprised where I'm going to go with it, because I know you're not thinking about it. So the thing is like this. So you take the 10 best basketball players. I think Zakar has heard me say this before. You take the 10 best basketball players in the world, right? Or forget about basketball. You take the 10 best athletes in the world, right? So we can include some of the guys from Africa and some of the guys from all around the world. You take the 10 best athletes in the world and you put them on a basketball court, and you give them a basketball, and you say, play basketball. They will never be able to experience the game of basketball unless you give them rules. right? You have a ball, you have two courts, but you can't do it. You will never be, it'll be chaos. People will be running into each other. This guy grabs the ball, he runs out of the court. This guy is doing this guy. So you can't play the game of basketball without rules. This is the concept of the 10 Commandments. God created a system to start with that gives us rules to be able to realize this game of life that we're living in. So let's go even a step further. If you're an athlete, even if you have the rules of the game, you cannot maximize your ability to play the game without fundamentals, right? You have to know how to use your body, you have to know how to step, you have to know how to position yourself, you know how to understand how the other person is working and adapting yourself in that way. Those fundamentals are the 613 mitzvahs, right? So we have rules on how to play the game. And then that's the broad, that's the collective, that's the chal. And then there's this idea of the prat within that, right? Which is me as an individual. And so this idea of me as the individual allows me to now maximize my ability as a human being, because ultimately God created us and he wants us to be able to experience the greatest parts of who we are. He doesn't want us to live this world and say, oh, I'm just living this world and I'm here for a period of time. And I'm just gonna serve my selfish desires, whatever I wanna eat, whatever I wanna consume. I do that for 50, 60, 70, 80 years, and then I'm gone. Like, what type of life is that? There's more to us than that. And anybody who's a parent and anybody who's a wife knows that there's more to life when you have to give, you have to provide, you have to share versus just being consumed with yourself. So this idea of the 613 laws that God gave us were basically ways for us to actualize our potential in every way. And we're going to go into that in more detail, but this is just a premise. That's what this whole idea was. And so let's go even a step further. One of the famous things, you got Kobe Bryant, you have all these different guys who may have is Aliyah the highest, Aliyah and Shemaim. And one of the things he talked about was this idea of, he was obsessed with watching game tape. You know what I mean? Like he was always watching tapes on, this guy, on Jordan, on Larry Bird, on Magic Johnson, this, he just would watch game tape. I remember Shaq said when Kobe first came to the Lakers, he said like they'll be like in the locker room on halftime and they'll turn around and Kobe's like, he'd be like shooting and do this by himself. Like he was just in that mindset, like, God, this guy's crazy, But that's where his head was at. Like his head was just about, he was the ultimate student of the game. Jordan was like so great and he was almost like Kiddush. Like he was like so like something we never seen of Jordan before. But Kobe in this context is a perfect example because he was such a student of the game. He had tremendous athletic ability, but he was a student of the game. So how do we understand the student of the game? That's what all these books are. This is what the Talmud is. This is what the Chumash is. Whatever. This is our game tape. We're studying the minds of some of the greatest spiritual people that ever existed on planet Earth, and we spend all of our time watching game tape because when we leave this room of study, we got to go out in the world and we got to perform. We got to perform these fundamentals. We got to perform these rules that God gave us. We have to do all of that dynamic in order for us to maximize our potential in this lifetime. Like getting married. You know what? Married in a Jewish context, everyone has their own experience, but it's work. Because it's not just you work and I come home and you come home and whatever, we do whatever. It's like, no, like it's real meticulous connection because the whole relationship between two people who are married is about connection to God. I want the ultimate fulfillment in life. So I'm married to you and God created this rule of systems. He gave us the rules and he gave us the fundamentals. And we have game tape in order for us to be able to achieve the highest connection to God. And so this is the premise of venturing into this discussion, that I have a soul and I have a body, my soul needs to be fulfilled. God gave me this spiritual technology that allows me to bring this light from the next world or a higher world, because we discussed these 4 worlds, that allows me to bring this light that's coming down from this upper world into this world, gives me the ability to receive this light, right? Because without knowing that, without having the right technology, the right tools, I can't receive this light. I can't receive this light, even though it's happening around me. You can't receive this light. And then we have to be able to differentiate the world that tells us that pleasure is the goal versus fulfillment is the goal. Because sometimes fulfillment comes to struggle. Sometimes fulfillment comes to difficulty. Sometimes fulfillment comes through suffering even. But you're still receiving your soul. And so that is a premise to get us into this idea of this new world that we're in right now. So let's go a little bit of a history lesson on economics in North America. So in the 18th century, America's major ability to engage with the rest of the world came through this era called the Agriculture Age. And the Agriculture Age was a time where the economy was basically built, like I said, almost like a third or fourth of all Americans, being like 4 out of every 10 people worked on a farm, you know, meaning that this was our biggest way to produce goods, produce services. And obviously we know that we had slaves, which gave it free labor and gave America a big head start against the rest of the world that, you know, actually had workers and had to pay them and deal with them, these different types of things. So that was a big part of the growth. So we calling that the Agriculture Age. This is the 18th century. And so the Agriculture Age was based around like people living on farms, families, people had tons of kids, you know, Americans were having tons of kids. The lifespan was much shorter actually, but people had kids and they farmed and they produced goods and they shipped them and they had slaves, plantations, the whole thing. And so that was the Agriculture Age. The 19th century is what we call the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution was a time where the farms themselves started to use things like the cotton gin and different machinery that allowed them to even have greater productivity. This is around the time they didn't need slaves anymore, so that's when these things started to change. But the idea of the the Industrial Revolution, what the beginning of it was taking a lot of the labor that was needed on in the Agriculture Age, and it started to shift to machinery. And that machinery even went even further as the 19th century went on, and it formed into this idea of factories. And so factories took people outside of the farm and put them into what we call warehouses or buildings or structures where, like, for example, during the Agriculture Age, maybe we had, you know, certain, like say we had wheat, for example, right? We had wheat and we would package it and we would sell it, we would export it. The Industrial Revolution allowed us to take that wheat and maybe turn it into bread. And then that bread was, go ahead, give us.
It's thought of it to me.
Yeah.
So that in the 18th century was the agricultural age. So America was able to produce as much as it was because they had slaves. It seems that, and I think there's been a lot of people be forming who have said this, but basically it seems that the Civil War was actually beneficial because when the Industrial Revolution was going to start, slaves were going to be absolute. Slave labor wasn't going to be able to compete with machines. The slaves are people.
But we're experiencing the same dynamic right now.
Right?
The fourth industrial revolution.
So it seems like maybe what the North went towards, because look, we don't want half our country trapped in the past. We want to be able to compete on the world stage.
Well, with all due respect, that's completely off. The North went to war because the South's economic growth was just getting out of hand.
Oh, because they were
making way too much money.
Because they had free labor.
And the Northerners weren't getting that.
Okay, so but I'm saying that, okay, that's still being.
He's looking at the cloud, the dynamic of the cloud. You had all these people that were going to be obsolete.
I'm saying like the Industrial Revolution was going to happen eventually. But eventually, that economic growth in the South was not going to be able to compete with factories and machines. So in the grand scheme of things, maybe
what a cotton gin could do took
50 people.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
maybe in the grand scheme of things, the Civil War was good because it forced them to give up slave labor so that when the Industrial Revolution really boomed, they could actually compete. That they had the social structure to.
Okay. Yeah. That's a great critique, and there's a lot of discussion about it, and and some people even say that the Civil War had a lot to do with how the corporation dealt with employees, because during the time of like the agriculture age, there were even people that weren't just slaves that also worked in these farms, these plantations. So what was the obligation of the employer to the employees? Because when you had slaves, if they were sick, you had to deal with them, you had to provide housing for them, you had to provide food for them, this whole thing. Now, with the Industrial Revolution coming in, now it's like, well, you know what? Me as a business owner, I don't want to deal with all that. I want to have my autonomy. But this is the system that was there before. So how do we bridge this gap of this new era of business, right? So that was the 19th century. The 19th century was very much about this idea of the Industrial Revolution, and as we said, it started off with machinery on the farms, and eventually it turned into the production of taking entities on a farm and making more product built around things. So if you had, certain, fruits, like, wine is a big commodity in California, right? There's a lot of vineyards. So in the agriculture age, you just took those grapes and these different things and you exported the grapes. You package them, you deal with them. Actually, Talmud talks about how to deal with these things. And then, but when the factories came along, you could actually produce wine, and you could produce grape juice, and you could produce grape, infused products, and you had supply lines. In America, it was known because a lot of the other side of the world, the world that was considered the world on the other side of the communist, the world that was very much influenced by communism and monarchies and these different things, these people, they did not want to change their system on machinery and create factories and create new education or whatever. And so that also gave America a head start. Okay, so this is where it gets juicy. This is where we build into. So the 20th century was considered the information age, which was a time where this idea of factories, because you have factories that build cars, build all types of different dynamics. But when the ideas of computers came into the world, or information technology came in, it created this. It created this whole new era of business, and this new era of business was very much connected to this idea of corporations. Even though the factory was considered basically still a business, the idea of a corporation had a different form of sophistication, meaning that you had less infrastructure and the business was less about manual labor. And it was very much focused on this idea of productivity through intellect, meaning that if I went to college now, I didn't learn how to build a machine as I would have learned in the Industrial Revolution, or if I was in the agriculture age, I would have learned how to deal with animals and farms. This was a time now where I was learning more technical skill sets. So this era was really much dominated by the left brain of the human intellect. And the schooling system that was created was based around, tests like the SATs and the LSTAT and the MCAT. And this was the entry into the mainstream economy, was your ability to use this left brain. So there was an author who wrote a book named called A Whole New Mind, named Daniel Pink. And he really went into detail of the differences between the era of the computer era versus this era that I'm about to touch into, which is this idea of the computer age And the computer age was, pretty much dominated by the 20th century. We had companies like IBM and, this whole system of technology. If you wanted to do medical work, we had to be a technical thinker. If you wanted to, participate in the form of legal, because law changed with the idea of corporations. And this is a whole long sugya we could talk about for hours. But the point is just saying, I'm giving you a context to see this developmental process of the economic system so you can understand where we're at today. So now we're in the 21st century, right? Or allegedly in the 21st century. And the 21st century is what they call the conceptual age. And the conceptual age is not just about information technology, it's about social technology. Meaning that I have technology that's given to me today that allows me to interact and connect to people all over the world. It allows me to take that information that I would have received in college. Now I have access to it directly, but my ability to connect to it is how it's conceptualized to me. This is the era that we're in today, right? And so this is where Facebook and Instagram and all of this, WhatsApp app, all these different things are there, allowing us to transport information and connect us on a global level that we never had before. But this is the key. And this connects to Rabbi Hirsch, and this connects to a lot of the limudim I've given here, and what the rabbi has been teaching us, is this era now that at first, during the Industrial Revolution, the religious world, the churches in America had a tremendous amount of power. And that power extended over in terms of them influencing the hashkafa of the world, of America specifically, but really the world in general, because even in Germany, we talked about Immanuel Kant and different people, Christian theology really dominated the world. And so the Industrial Revolution was still a continuance of that, but the power from the church went towards the state. And that's where this idea of patriotism and nationalistic identity and America being the best and the manifest destiny and all these ideas came from the sense of patriotism, but leaving the church in a lot of ways, meaning that we now want to bring over immigrants. We want to bring over the most talented people in the world to come here. We want them to be American. We want to have a sense of patriotism. So the 20th century begin the era of the corporations. In the era of the corporations, that this nationalistic empowerment of the government was now being influenced by corporations. And corporations were now electing politicians, they were influencing policies, and the structure of corporations goes like this. And Zakaria knows because he's a business major. You have a board of directors, and these board of directors hires a president and a CEO. And this president and CEO hires infrastructure, whether it's vice presidents, regional managers, whatever it is, and they all function. And the board of directors, or the chairman of the board of directors, is basically there to facilitate the functionality of how this mechanism of the corporation functions. This is the functionality job. So the corporation said, hey, if we have a certain amount of money, we can influence this nationalistic patriotic government that was formed in the 19th century, and we can now influence policy to be able to get better margins on business, to make sure our products were sold before other people. So you have companies like DuPont and Procter and Gamble and I don't know if you have other companies, Electronic, Philip Morris, Electronic, all these different tobacco companies, these different people that came into the marketplace and said, hey, if our politician is there making policy, then we could exploit for our benefit, right? So now, and this is where I believe, in the point of this limud, this is where I believe everything changes. We change because we're in an era of social technology. And there was a book written by Thomas Friedman. And it's a famous book, you guys may have read it, The World is Flat. You heard of it? Whatever, it's a New York Times bestseller. Amazing book. And he basically talks about globalization and how now in this era, the world is completely flat, meaning that, you have a guy like a Jay-Z, right? I'm using rap, for example. So you have a guy like a Jay-Z, right? He's a huge brand. He's been built for years and years and years. But some guy, some young kid who's like 18, 19 years old can create a song and become just as viral as he is in 24 hours. Because now we're in the era of the individual. And there's a lot of points, I don't want to get too into it. I'm not giving this like college academic thing, but the world went from top down to bottom up, right? That's really the difference between the era of the corporation versus the era of social technology. Meaning that in the beginning, in order to be in the music business is the best example. If you wanted to become famous before in the music industry, you had to have a record deal, you had to have the company behind you, they had to put a big advertisement budget behind you, all these different dynamics. But now today, there's people who are becoming famous just from shooting a viral video. Like I used to work in the media business, right? So the group called the New Boys, it's a great story. The group called the New Boys, two really great stories about them. One is how did they get the name the New Boys? So there's two guys in the group. You had this guy, Ben J, and then you had Legacy, right? Ben J was a darker complected guy, Earl, and then you had Dominique, who was Legacy. So how did they get the name New Boys? He said because Dominique's dad worked in the military, so he had to move around a lot. So every time he would go to a new school, because they had to move around a lot, he would go to a new school, he was always the new boy. And he would get all this attention. So he loved being the new boy, right? And so I fell in love with these guys when they told me the story. And he says like, yeah, I was a new boy and I would get so much attention, but then like a few months later, no one cared anymore. But then we would have to move and I'll be the new boy again. So he created, so that was the name of the group called the New Boys. So the song that made them literally millions of dollars was called You're a Jerk, right? So how did that song come into creation? So they were already making songs and this whole thing, and they were copying, other groups that were, like you had the, I can't think of the name, it was a group out of New York, I can't think of their name right now. But the point is the same, so they were copying other groups. So they got put on punishment because they weren't doing well in school. So different era. So the point is saying that, so they got put on punishment by their parents. So they both snuck out of their houses after midnight and recorded the song You're a Jerk in their closet, okay? And then you came up with the song, and the whole story of how the song got big, I could go step by step, the whole thing. But the point is just saying that these guys, these two kids took, was it Fruity Loops? Was that the program? Fruity Loops, yeah. Fruity Loops, the program. And they produced a song in their closet, and they became multimillionaires. Some guy like me comes along like, wow, this is hot, let's do something. But they're big. I mean, they broke up, and then all these other groups came out of that. But anyways, took all that money, Migos, everybody. But the point is just saying, Ray Schwerter, all these. Bob, was it Ray Schwerter? Was it?
Eardrummers.
Eardrummers. Is that what they call?
My guy was one of their big producers.
So you're basically, what I see is you're giving us a picture about technology, which originally started out somewhat oppressive, or let's say completely oppressive.
Yeah.
Developed to the point where kind of the developers of the technology lost control of it, and now
the average person,
everything is upended.
Exactly.
Now the people at the lowest level of society, they have access to the highest level of society because of the development of technology that from the outside we would look like, oh, these are the greedy capitalists, and this is the thing that they're developing in order to control people. But it's a double-edged sword.
Exactly.
The control that they want also opens up the door for a loss of control.
A loss of control, but on a certain level, even a bigger opportunity.
Right. Their loss of control is the little man's opportunity.
So here's exactly what Yoshiao just said. This is the key point. This is where it gets amazing. The amazing point is that the corporation that dominated the 20th century, now the individual has just as much power on many levels as the corporation, as the nation state, and even the religious institutions. And that's why you're seeing little small people doing billions of views online, creating the. But
I get what you're saying, and I agree with it mostly, but it's limited because corporations still create the framework for that exposure for the small guy. If they don't like what you're putting out, they can censor you, block you.
No, they can't. That's the whole point. Right now, we have friends in Russia, right? And they're complaining that Putin is trying to block. I mean, because of the sanctions, Facebook got blocked, right? But they still have other forms of technology to get the information out. We're still hearing stories from blog sites out of Russia that are telling us what's going on there and how people are being arrested and rounded up, and there's thousands of protesters in Moscow that are being, put in prison.
Against the war?
Yeah, against the war in Moscow, right? But I'm saying we wouldn't have heard that 50 years ago.
You're saying the cat is out of the bag. The technology that was developed for the purposes of control have reached such a level, but we know that everything has two sides in this world.
Yeah.
That they unwittingly created their own undoing. In
Unwittingly.
many ways.
In
many ways.
No one could imagine. The founding fathers of America never imagined that there was going to be information technology that was going to be created. And so how does that connect to what we're talking about? We're saying that these 613 mitzvot are broken into three categories. These mitzvot are broken into three categories. We have Mishpatim, Hukim, and Mitzvot. So Rabbi Hirsch, in his book Horeb, he says like this: the laws of Mishpatim are the laws between man. How to properly conduct ourselves with our fellow man, whether it's through business, whether it's through living environments, whether it's through economics, whether it's through geographics. How do we deal with our fellow man as it relates to what God wants? This is Mishpatim. This is inside of this book, Horeb. So he goes through this explicitly. The laws of Hukim are the laws of how we deal with earth, plants, animals, even our own body, our thoughts, our soul, and even the words that come out of our mouth. How do we do it? Because the way that the world is structured now, in terms of laws and how I deal with other people, the only thing that I have is American law, right? American law says you can't do this, you can't do that, you go to jail for this, you go to jail for that, all these different things. This is what American law tells us, right? So, but what does God say? How does God say we deal with our fellow men? And so when it comes to dealing with the environment, when it comes to dealing with even our own body, when it comes to dealing with our soul, because we established earlier that our soul has a dynamic itself. So how do we deal with our own soul? Okay, I don't know. What does God say? And then you have the laws of mitzvot, right? And so the thing about mitzvot and hukim, according to Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, maybe connected to Islamic, who knows? But the point is saying that this idea.
It's a shin, but it's okay.
Is it a shin?
It's a shin. Shimshon.
Shimshon.
It's a bit shin, but there's a connection.
I don't know. I didn't say it. You guys told me today. So the thing is to say like this, is that Rabbi Hirsch says that the laws of Mishpatim and the laws of Hukim basically are there to make sure we don't destroy the world that God created. How to deal with our fellow man? If we don't deal with our man the right way, we ultimately bring destruction to the world. If I do wrong to you, if I damage you, if I hurt you, if I physically steal from you, if I damage your property or anything like that, I bring damage to the whole world. So that's not what we're here to do. We're here to follow God's law and be in his system. The laws of Hukim. If I go out, like you have corporations today that just dump toxic waste from their manufacturing into a river, into an ocean, killing billions of fish, and other sea animals. Or we have, things that, we have drugs and different things that damage our body. Or we have, things that, there's people who are destroying rainforests and things just because they want the lumber, people killing animals because they want their tusk or their skin or whatever. This is not how God designed the world. We have responsibilities to animals. We have responsibilities to plants, to trees. to everything that's subordinate to us. This is the laws of Hukim. So these laws are here for us not to destroy the world that God created. Now, the laws of mitzvot are laws that were created that allow us to achieve our highest potential of living. This is what the mitzvot are. Normally you think mitzvot, oh, we have 613 mitzvot. No, we have laws of Mishpatim, which is our laws between man. We have the laws of Hukim, which are things that are subordinate to man. And according to Rabbi Hirsch, the laws of mitzvot are acts of love that transcend our responsibility to our fellow man and nature and connect us directly to God. So how did this all connect? So what our job is as B'nai Israel, B'nai Avraham, whatever term you want to use, our job is to create a better world. Our job is to be the source of inspiration for the world to connect to God. So look at the moment that we're in history. We're at a moment in history where now the whole economic structure of the Western world is now down to the individual. The individual is now the source of parnasa, the source of intellect, the source of influencing policy. So now, for the first time in history, we have the chance to be. It's okay. I guess it says his battery's going low. No, not here, but over here. I don't know if you had to deal with this. Anyways, so we're almost done anyways. If Instagram, if you miss out, you miss out. So, no, it's okay. It's okay. Because it's on his network, it's on Robert's network. So the point is to say now we're at a point in human history where now all of the manifestation is taken away from the church and the mosque and even the synagogue. And now it was transferred to the corporation, and the corporation that was dominating politics in the same way that the religious institutions were in the agriculture age. Now in the corporate age, the information age, the corporations took over. And so now we're seeing all the power is in the hands of the people. The people have the ability to create, and we're still in the beginning of the 21st century, right? We're not at the middle or the end. We're just in the beginning now that we have this power. And so now this is the time that we can engage regular, everyday human beings.
I'm just saying 21st century as it ties into our limud all day. We're in Bina.
Yeah.
That's where we are. Shemeke. That's all.
Okay. Okay, and so the point is, and I agree, we're in Bina. B. B.
Bina.
Explain Bina.
We have three intellectual faculties: Chochmah, Bina, and Dat. Right? Chochmah is like the general field of the ability to think, and then Bina is like the particulars of thinking, and then Dat combines the two, and it's like our knowledge, our connection to reality, our what we know to be true, right? So the name that animates this idea of the left brain, the logic, the breaking things into pieces, that's Bina. The name that's associated with it has a gematria of 21. So that he's saying we're in the 21st century. The gematria is that each letter has a numerical value.
There's a number connected.
So the name that is associated with this concept of logical intellect has a numerical value of 21. So when he says we're in the 21st century, that's a remez to the fact that this is what we're dealing with right now. We're dealing with how to understand the Kirud, logic, and those types of that type of thinking.
Remez, that's connection.
Remez is like an illusion or a hint.
Like a hint,
right? Because so. You would say that like 21st century is arbitrary, right? Like who came up with the calendar, whatever. We're in the 21st century doesn't mean anything. But no, God controls everything. Even the non-Jews, God is directing and involved with their ideas. So when Rome came up and said, no, this is year 0, and now we're in the 21st 100 years, right? After that, Hashem is telling us something. The way we look at it is that there's really no accident. If you're on a certain level, you could bring a whole level of chachma by looking at this cup and the stains in it. Like, there's really no accidents. So that's all I was saying, is that because we're in the 21st century, it's connected to this concept of Bina.
So Rabbi Pinchas just walked in and give him a recap that we went through. Bless you, Abru. We went through the Industrial Revolution, which was a time that was, was basically around agriculture, but the churches and the religious, ideology dominate the world. And then we went into the 20th century, which was the era of the corporation and the power that the religious world had shifted to the world of the nation state, which was very much patriotism and these types of ideas. And then now we're in the 21st century where we have social technology, we're in a conceptual age, and this ideology is completely controlled and ruled by the individual. And the individual has the ability today through social technology to make just as much of an impact in the world as corporations and nation states to affect ideas, change, and concepts in the world. And so what we're saying now, that the corporation or the mechanism of production in the world is down to the individual. Now we could bring this concept of the truth of the 613 mitzvot that Rabbi Hirsch breaks into three categories: the laws of Mishpatim, the laws between man, the laws of Hukim, the laws of things that are subordinate to man, things that are subordinate to man, like planet Earth, like nature, and even our own bodies, our words, our soul, everything that is connected. And now we have the ability to bring ideas of the proper way, because at the end of the day, just like the corporation and just like the nation state, we're in the West focused on the level of productivity. We're focused on the level of manifestation. And so from that space, we're saying that, hey, you know what? What is the best way to increase my quality of life, which we discussed before? How do I achieve fulfillment in this life? How do I create meaning for this life? How do I take this soul and give it the most nourishment to project my mind, body, and intellect? How do I do that? How do I maximize my quality of life? And we're saying that you can't do that without the influence of God's light, of Hashem's light, entering your soul. And that's why Hashem gave us 10 commandments. That's why he gave us 613 mitzvot. And then that's why he gave us the knowledge of the Torah to be able to use as almost game tape to be able to connect our thinking in the same way that Kobe would connect his thinking to Michael Jordan. We connect our thinking to Rabbi Akiva. We connect our thinking to Rabbi Shimon. He connects his thinking to Magic Johnson. We connect our thinking to the RE. And so that's why we learn this text, because in the same way that Kobe wants to be amazing in his games, we want to be amazing in life every day, because we want to experience the highest quality of life. So now we're in an era where the individual is now the master to degree of his destiny in Olam Hazeh, right? But if he wants to connect to all these other worlds, Zachary, you have something? If he wants to connect to all these other worlds, he has to be able to connect himself to the full picture. And so where we're at today is that the social revolution that can happen is being able to take all the individuals who are now corporations and now nation states, and even as the Midrashim tell us, even every human being is a world unto themselves. And so now that this idea is fully quantified on a physical level, that now we have the ability to infuse the reality and tell and show the average individual that, hey, you can create a reality that is the ultimate experience of your potential by using the tools of God. And if we had this conversation during the age of the corporation, everybody's working for the same corporation. So if a corporation is dumping toxic waste in a place called Chernobyl and destroying the ecosystem and all these different things, if you talk to the person who works in human resources at that corporation, he or she has nothing to do with it. If you're talking to the person who's on the sales team for the products, he has nothing to do with it. The person who's working in the manufacturing, he has nothing to do with it. If you talk to the CEO, okay, maybe he has, but we know what? There's just entities like the Samic Mim, we're coming for you. And we have entities like, the Lamed Yud and all these different things that are influencing the thoughts of the CEO and the board of directors and the chairman of these different things. So now we're saying that if we have Hashem's support to do these ventures, that we can be able to take the individual and say that you're going to leave this world one day, and this is the way to maximize your potential in this lifetime, and thus be a part of a greater idea, which is bringing world unity, world peace, and allowing your soul to be in the highest place after your lifetime is done.
Question. So when we high school, study civilizations, and we study about America. The first concept that was taught in school in France is like America is a place of the self-made man. So from the beginning, it was like the dreams and the purpose of the founders. So I understand, I'm going to let you know that the purpose of the American society was to bring the individual to be like the main power, the main strength.
I feel like that it wasn't the purpose of America, but it happened in spite of America. It happened in spite of the development of America, because we talked about that, like what the corporations were trying to achieve was total control. But since we live in a world where everything has two sides, their drive for total control created the space for the nobility of the individual. It was an accident. They didn't mean to do it. They meant to lock down everything, right? Capital wanted to control everything, but he's kind of given us a historical synopsis of the development where, but in spite of all that, the individual emerges victorious in the framework of all this technological advancement.
That's the point of my question. It's like, do you think that the purpose is to make place for individuals? What would be the definition of individuals? Or does an individual only exist from the corner of society? And is it not the purpose to have society? Like we have seen this morning, what do I mean? What Moshe, what the Jew, the model offered, it was like individuals, of course, exist, produce, but the society, if you want the clan of the Prat, is the final target. Is my question for you.
So the idea with America was this idea that there were people who immigrated and left the rulership of King George, right? This was the idea. And the idea was to create a society where every man, woman, and child, and again, when people hear me say this, they're like, oh, but what about this and that? We didn't live up to those ideas, right? So America still has not lived up to its ideas. But the idea itself, if you read the Constitution, read the Declaration of Independence, was to create a society where people could rule over themselves within a collective society. That was the main concept. And that concept will be fueled by an...
This is what I said. Rule by yourself without the self-made man. You need the purpose.
But it was still underneath the guidance of God. It wasn't themselves. It was still the idea was these people who founded America were people who studied the Zohar, you know, who studied Kabbalah, who saw that there was more fulfillment to the world than even their own selves. And that's why they spoke about ideas of equality. They spoke of ideas of, you know, unity, this idea of perpetuating of a greater self. The imagination to even perceive the self better came from this. So that's where the idea, there weren't very many Jews in America, but they still called it a Christian Judeo idea. And not only that, when America was formed, they wanted like things like Hebrew, they wanted things like Torah study, these things to be a part of the system of America. This was the initial idea. Like if you look,
There's Hebrew in the seal of Yale University. The seal of Yale University is Hebrew.
this was their goal. They wanted to bring Mashiach. They called it a new Jerusalem. They called it a new Garden of Eden. Like this was their word. Now, were they able to actualize that? No. They still had slaves. They still had inequalities. They still had things. And you're right. Slavery was something that was pervasive around the world. It wasn't just America. America was one of the entities that demonized slavery eventually. That doesn't mean my ancestors are okay with that. That doesn't mean that we were able to get retribution or the different things that were owed to us through the labor that we're given. But the point is saying we're talking about ideas that we can hold ourselves accountable for. And now that we're in this era where the individual has power, because it's not, when we look at America, we can't look at it from the standpoint of America as a sole entity. We have to look at it as a composite of the world itself, right? The issues that existed in America existed all over the world. Issues of inequalities, issues of racism, issues of slavery, issues of whatever. But the American system, as limited as it is, fought to their ability to demonize and eradicate and change these different dynamics. Are we perfect society? Absolutely not. But as a growing system from what America was 200 years ago to what it is now, I mean, it speaks for itself. So I would say that the idea is, how do we create a new definition of what God is for the individual as a prat and not God as a call? And that's what the era of the Industrial Revolution was about, was, okay, you have Christian theology, you have what you call Judeo-Christian, whatever, but that was a call. But now we're in the era of the individual, where the individual has the ability to create reality themselves. So what does God mean for them? Even divorce in America, right? Like, look at the genius of the divorce in America. The divorce in America is saying this: women can become multimillionaires in America. They can work in our system and make millions of dollars. The premise of marriage had to do with men protecting and providing for women through the agriculture age, because women stayed at home. They weren't able to go into the field and do the same manual labor. Same thing during the Industrial Revolution. They weren't able to deal with machinery and these different things, physical strength. So now today, you say, through the computer era, this is where divorce broke down. They say, oh, the family system broke down in America. But look at the genius. The genius is now we have to redefine what marriage is, because it's not based off of economic survival. It's not based off of physical might. According to the Torah, it's something much higher what men and women's relationship is. So now with that, even gender, like we're like, oh, people saying, I don't want to be a man anymore. I want to be a woman, whatever. But what does gender mean outside of a society based around economics? Go ahead.
But how are you going to redefine gender or redefine this or redefine that? Like you're saying, like God is God, right? How are you going to redefine God? Like, that's the thing that give me, like, to me, when whoever start doing stuff like that, is like, it can't be true, because like water is water. You can't redefine it as water. Like, it's not, why are you tricking it and fixing it?
But I'm saying we have to have God's definition of what a man is. We've been dealing with the industry's basis of what a man and woman is. There's been no God in terms of the definitions of why we have marriage, why we have genders, why sexuality is the way that it is. This isn't just like uniformity. This isn't a military. God has a system.
So is it clarifying what marriage is?
Redefining.
Because I think certain elements took control of definitions.
Yes.
And now now the truth wants to regain control of those definitions. If I understand what he's saying.
If I could, I think the introduction is semantics either way. Like the ikr is giving or tapping into and establishing an expectation and a standard quality of control measure that is, we're going to go by God's definition, or we're going to have the means of identifying and clarifying what God's definition is to then verify that we've actually gone by that as opposed to people that have just said that. And how will we prove that that's not true? We'll go into God's text, depths of God's word, and verify and clarify and identify. And then we'll say, this is the definition. And the real whatever is making sure everyone has that functionality or capability. Everything else has been sort of set up charismatically. One guy's there, he's got the book, you don't know what he's going to say. Everyone's just listening. You just, yeah, sounds good, amen, or whatever. Versus everyone having the book, everyone having the page. What line are we on? Line 36. Hey, you mispronounced the third word, and we're all there together. So that when you leave, we all say, yeah, I read it. It said, God said that honor your father and mother means don't sit in your father's chair. The other says don't sit in your father's chair. So someone says, hey, honor your father and mother means, you gotta give them half your money. It says, well, that's not what it says. Turn to page 226, line 9. It says, da 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 da. And you knowing that, says. You knowing that removes other people from your control system, which then blocks or removes the blockage of you being directly to God. And it also removes the impetus or the ability for someone to recreate a system again where they're on top, because you connected people directly to God, not through you telling them how to get there, but from you giving them the tools of how to get there themselves. There you go.
So then it was a lot from the beginning then.
100%.
Well, it was economic based and never spiritually based.
Right.
It was based off of what the body needs. It was never connected to the soul.
Right.
And so what we're saying now is that us going to America, and especially being people of color, we're all about the soul, right? Soul music, soul food, this is our whole thing. Now we have the spiritual technology to define what the soul is and what its functionalities are and what it needs. So even if a guy has a temptation for another man, to say that exists, right? God forbid, but it exists, right? Is that going to bring your soul the most nourishment? Is that going to bring you the most fulfillment? A guy says, I don't want to get married, it's too much hassle. Fine. But the Torah says your soul is going to get more nourishment through the marriage.
But you think people don't know this already?
I don't think it's ever been discussed in American history. I don't think this idea of what the soul needs as it relates to the traditions from the Torah itself, I think some people have known that. That's why they preserve families. That's why they had their own private interest groups. That's why they've done business amongst each other, married amongst each other. But especially for our people, for sure, that were denied the ability to even read, right? Or even go to economic institutions, for sure that's been denied to us.
I think on a certain level, what you're saying, yeah, but it's like certain right and wrongs. I feel like most of the time, you know what I mean? Like when you go
inherently.
It's like if you clarifying it for me and telling me more in depth about it, but I think that like
it already makes sense to you.
Yeah,
it's natural to you. I agree, but now in order to deal with a system that may give you an opposing idea, that's where we need truth and technology. That's what we need, tools.
But to your example, what I'm saying, right, you say if guy feel this way about another guy, girl feel this way about another girl. It's like when you were saying earlier, I meant to ask, you was talking about joy and happiness. Is like, how can I really tell somebody, how can I give when this is what joy is? Like, how can it be a concrete way of joy to me? If somebody like playing a video game all day, like that's really joy to them.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
But to them, that's joyful. So it's like, how can you say, and then happiness, I can see how what he was saying with the
not individuals.
what?
Why it's about society, not individuals, because like we said, if you give a definition to individual, everybody will really it's all the same.
So when the media is pumping that like this is happiness and this is satisfaction, how does the individual?
No, the purpose is to give power to society, but not to the individuals. Because if you give power to individuals, you give to everybody the possibility to define upon his own what is that. So how can I say to you, this is wine, it's for you, it's water. So you have to create everything in the corner of society, collectivity. And after the individual are swallowed inside.
You're saying because the non-Jewish world is structured like that, and that's how they decided to structure their reality, we have then the truth needs to start from the top. It's trickle down economics in truth.
Okay, and I think that's a part of the shit that the Rob missed. We showed how that top-down philosophy through economics has shifted. So we're saying now it is an era of the individual, where individual himself, like say Young, right? So Young starts to learn, and he says, hey, you know what? I learned this wisdom in the East about how my soul could achieve fulfillment without anything material. Just on my own, just on my relationship with God. I could wake up in the morning, I don't need this book, I don't need anything. I could talk directly to God and say, God, you know, what I need, whatever, and he was going to give it to me on a spiritual level. Maybe not physical, maybe not the Benz, maybe not the gold chain, maybe not whatever, but he's going to fulfill me and I'm good. He has ability to influence 100 million people.
To empower his word, you have to be a society. If you are alone and you cross you on the corner of the street, you see the same thing. You will not believe. You say, okay, it's your reality. But if it's a group, it's a dynamic, it's a society, collectivity.
Yeah.
Bringing the proof that what one individual can tell him in the corner of the street is, it's like, okay, so global is open to listen.
Yeah.
But I cannot say, okay, we made, you know, God can give to you happiness just for spirituality. So okay, I can do a discussion.
Yeah.
Between me and him, and what make him more right than no, not sure. But you need the collectivity to empower the word of the individual.
Are you saying that the proper model is cloud? You have to start with a cloud, which is the society, and then the individual can be empowered from those ideas, and through that, this individual's unique experience can create a new type of cloud.
Because it secures you. It is right, because if you don't have something telling you, okay, we have a record, we have a trace, a story, that this mindset, this point of view is healthy, and we have results on certain times showing that, okay, this is the solution can be applied to many lives. You can only do that with the cloud, with the journey, with the global. That's why Moshe was obsessed, Moses was obsessed by the globality, the society. Hashem said, you know what? I will erase all of them, or kill all of them, I'll start everything from you. You know what? Remove me from your throne.
So Robert, I'm agreeing 100% with you, 100%. The only thing I'm saying is that the new in this 21st century, the new call is the individuals, and it's not the government anymore, and it's not the corporation.
I said what I said because I think I teased that structure out from what you had already said, and I think you guys are really agreeing.
Yeah, we agree. We're just saying what the call is shifted in the West because of the economic structure and what social technology has allotted for the individual, meaning that now the social technology, you know, Zakaria now, right? He's a guy, he came into the Jewish world, he's making music, he's affecting, you know, tens of thousands of people, whether it's 3,000 people listening 20,000 times or whatever it is, he's still in that place. And before, in order for him to do that, 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, he would have had to be a rabbi with a Habura, because that's the only way they would have been able to reach him.
In the example then, the klal of Western culture said that hip hop is a viable medium to transmit information. And then him in his protness said, okay, I'm a rapper and now I'm Jewish and I create Jewish rap. And now he created a new klal.
That's it, yeah.
But what's interesting to me is, I think it was his uncle Crib. One of the guys sat down and he was talking about in the Jewish culture for him, if the whole is struggling and hurting, then I'm struggling and hurting. So even if I'm not flashy in front of everybody, I think he said something along the lines, if I go in a room and I eat extra candy, the walls will know, even if the people outside don't see. So he said it's on him to dumb down his lifestyle. So maybe I should eat one piece of candy and give the other 7 to other people. And when he said that, it was like, that's really like the, so what you're saying, you know, on our side, it's like, I gotta get it.
Yeah.
You know, man, I gotta get it. And usually I gotta get it means taken from somebody else. When his I gotta get it was, I'm gonna take for myself to give to somebody else. And it's like, if he feel this way, and like Brad was saying, it's a community environment. I know he's not the only person to feel like that. So then it's like, when these more people start having that same ideology, then it's like, for a fact, I'm not saying Jews don't harm each other and stuff like, but that's why on our side, there's more people that's killing and murdering, because it's like, man, I gotta get what's mine for me.
So can I just say something real quick before I take this phone call? And what we're saying is the Torah clarifies that that's not optional. That's mandatory. So everyone knows that. You know,
That's
people
correct. That's right. But I'm just
No, we're there. But what we're saying is that the concept of things going viral is the new way to spread new ideas. So I'm saying, like, even if it's just you, back in the day, it'll be you in your neighborhood, right? And you'll have a certain thing, you have these certain thoughts. Nobody would know unless they came to your house and broke bread with you, hung out with you. That was then. But now you could articulate your whole life, your whole philosophy, and put it in graphics and music and theater and all these different things, and put it out. And everybody in your neighborhood and every neighborhood that connects to your lifestyle would be able to connect to your ideas.
I got the power to do.
Through social technology. And that created a new medium.
But my only kickback.
Yeah, we're good.
My only question is, what I'm saying is, when my truth, what he's saying, like, you're right, I can sit home, the guys were in the closet, they made the video, jerk, you can go to detail, the song, but like, this person, that's just my truth. So say I kick out my truth and 6 million people dig it or connect. It might be 2 to those 6 million, it might be entertaining, but how does that mean it's the truth? Or how does that mean that's what's best for the whole? That's what I'm saying. How is it not just something I just created and it's cool for the moment?
I don't think he's saying that everything that goes viral is true.
Okay.
I think he's saying that technology has created a framework in which the individual has the ability to go viral, and that means truth also has the ability to go viral.
And the underlying presumption is that God, was in control of the other things that went viral, even if they weren't seemingly a part of the logic at that moment. And called the Homer, all the more so, God will be responsible for what goes viral next. And it's going to be supported by the things that went viral before that had nothing to do with whatever. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean?
So whatever, it's just a building process. This is the first time we like building whatever, but that's the idea, to go back into America and to be able to, go back and forth. We still want to live here and raise our kids here, the whole thing. But the idea is to be able to go into America and go into communities, to go into corporations, to go with individuals that have influence, and to be able to give them tools and insights to be able to say there's a higher level of living life. There's a more expanded, like you said, the guy who said, oh, I'm going to take 10 pieces of candy to give 7 to 7 other people. So it's that more expanded way of living life and a more godly way of living life. And some people, the reality is, we want to bring people closer to the system.
I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but I think that what you've presented tonight, you have provided the seeds of a very meaningful critique for a powerful Haredi hashkafa that is expressed by the likes of Rabbi Yitzhak Meir Morgenstern and Rabbi Yitzhak Schwartz. Okay, these are big guns in the Haredi world. And what do they say? When Corona started, they talked about that this is the manifestation of the Nun Shari Tuma. Okay, and that really the Nun Shari Tuma, what is it? It's the internet. So their shita is that spirit has managed to progress and sustain itself in spite of technology. Yes. And what I hear tonight is not in spite of technology. It's dafka because of the particular development of technology that it's given an added koach to the individual. Yeah. And I think that's I don't know that, like, I don't think we can overestimate how important this idea is, because look, that might be the answer for the panemius of the panemius. They need to be untouched by the outside. They can't deal with the outside.
Yeah.
But the chitzonius of the panemius,
Exactly.
that's dealing with the outside
They're
world,
in
we
that
understand that this was developed by God, because God's doing everything. And again, along with the shita of your conception of America
Yeah.
that you expressed yesterday, you're really expressing kind of the component parts of a very unified hashkafa that I think is the chitzonius of the panemius, that is going to allow the inner aspects of the Torah to communicate with the rest of the world.
Yeah.
But you know what I did, because they, like you say, we the same level.
Exactly.
So the ones that do, because what connect usually is what's the truth. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So the ones that when they do get it and they use it, then it got the ability to.
It just flows. It just flows. If we've been listening to non-truths for I don't know how many years, just a little bit of truth changes the whole. Yeah, I mean, like we're just saying, like I mean, it's just like okay, here's God's system. That's real. Here's God's system, and this is how you could use it to maximize your life. That's it. Whether you become, if you want to be Jewish, great, we'll help you that. But if you don't want to do it, we're still going to give you tools. Chill, we're good, we're good, just chill. You know, regardless of anything that you want to do, we just want to help you get there. There's higher levels, which is I have to, like Zakaria said, what we're talking about is a requirement. It's not like you have the free will to say, do I do it, do I not do it? We're saying you have to do it.
Right.
So that's one level, but another level is choosing to do it. So we want to be able to give you the tools, you know, people in America, the tools to do it. And I believe specifically with hip hop, like we have people that are doing holy raps and they should continue to do it and have success. But for me, I'm looking at it as making rap more holy. To be able to deal with these guys and be able to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to show you a picture of what reality could be.
And you know how the way that you want to make rap more holy is that the people have to live the rap. That's why the rap, they hit the hardest. We talked about it
Yeah,
before.
it's true.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
So it's like, I could go out and whatever, you know, but it's like when you live in it, you know, his music coming across because he's been living this for a while.
He's living it, exactly.
You know, so it's
exactly.
Like, but when you hit us with the truth and the stuff you talk, like the books and the knowledge,
exactly.
It'll give us the opportunity to learn it and embrace it, and it'll be our truth then.
That's what I'm saying. And then when you, and especially when you learn a lot of Rabbi Pinchas's Torah, he'll show you that this is the origination of the wisdom coming from Africa. This is your ancestors' wisdom. This isn't something over there that you got to adapt and you got to take on to be able to be a better person. This is the wisdom of your ancestors, and this is why you went through. That's what I was saying yesterday about the prison system, whatever, that God had to put you through a washing board system to cleanse out everything for you to reconnect to your heritage in a pure way. And that's what we're learning. I know Zakaria got to go. So, all right. So, Baruch atah Adonai leolam, b'amen, b'amen.